All right, I'm Chris Phillips here at the Leopolis Jazz Festival in Lviv in Ukraine, and it's wonderful for me to get some time with this man. This is guitarist Lee Ritenour, as we say in the UK, but actually, Lee, everywhere else, like America says Ritenour, but there are variations, right?
That's right. Ritenour is the English pronunciation, but it's a Huguenot name. It's part French, part German. So when I used to play the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland, and Claude Nobs was alive, he'd say, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lee Ritenour," and then in England, it's that way, and in Japan they reverse the R and the L, so it's Lee Ritenour.
It's amazing that I'm sitting here interviewing you, and you're actually going to change the strings on this famous guitar here. Are they well overdue for a change? How often do you have to change them?
Well, usually my production manager Daniele changes them, but he's busy and he's changing the other one, so I thought I would do this while we're talking. And this is the L5, my Gibson model, and if it's possible, I change almost every show, but sometimes every other show.
What happens if you're mid-show and a couple of strings break or one breaks? I'm sure it happens.
Well, it doesn't happen these days because I use a little heavier tension than I used to, so knock on wood. But I remember one time I was playing this small club, the Baked Potato, in the early days in the 70s, and Jeff Beck walked in to hear the show. Of course, I break a string during the solo.
Bound to happen. The Baked Potato is in LA, right? You still play that venue, don't you?
I don't. My son does now. So it's a trip to see Wesley with his band go over there. And he's actually going to be there in July, and it's his birthday that night, so I'm going to sit in.
Speaking of Wesley, is that a nod to the great Wes Montgomery when you named him?
Yes, well, I was working on the album Westbound, and which was 1993, and it was dedicated to Wes Montgomery, so I was working on the album almost the whole year, and that was the same year, July 14, that Wes was born. So it was a boy, and it was sort of like, let's see, I'm working on this album dedicated to Wes Montgomery. What should I name my son? Wes. Okay, Wesley.
And he's a drummer. Did you want him to be a guitarist, or when you weren't particularly bothered?
He was so funny. When he was 5 years old, I said, "Do you want to start studying? Take some lessons and start playing an instrument?" He said, "Yeah." He was 5, and I said, "Do you want to play the piano?" And he said, "No." I said, "You want to play the saxophone?" "No." "You want to play the guitar?" And then at 5 years old, he said, "No, why would I want to do that? You play the guitar." And I said, "Well, what do you want to play?" He said, "I want to play the drums." And that was it. 5 years old, that was his instrument.
Every 5-year-old child wants to play the drums, for sure, my son included. It's great for me to spend time with you because as a young man, just like your young man growing up, I got into music through some of the grooves that you created in the late 70s, early 80s. Captain Fingers, Rio Funk, Countdown, things like that. And in particular in the UK, we love those. We call it jazz funk. What do you remember about those days? Just one memory about those days of traveling and making music.
Well, the 70s were a great time for a lot of these. It was very fresh for combining different combinations of music. In America, on the East Coast, you had Grover Washington and David Sanborn and Bob James, and on the West Coast, you had Dave Grusin and me and Larry Carlton and the Crusaders and Joe Sample, and then you had all these kind of combinations, and there was the fusion already that was Miles had started, and then Mahi Vishnu with John McLaughlin, and then Weather Report and various groups. But then we started combining more R&B rhythms, pop rhythms, and Brazilian rhythms, and so it was very fresh to be combining all this stuff.
Yeah. You're here in Ukraine with your old friend and musical compadre Dave Grusin. Your friendship with him is a long one, doesn't it? I mean, I know you got a Grammy in 1985 for Harlequin, but your musical partnership goes way back further than that, right?
Oh, definitely. I met Dave when I was 19 years old, and I had gotten turned on to recording with Sergio Mendes, and Dave had done those early arrangements for Sergio Mendes, so he was very close to Sergio. And there was a party at Sergio's house one night, and Antonio Carlos Jobim was there, Jerry Mulligan was there, all of Sergio's band was there, and Dave Grusin was there. There was a big jam session, so that was a big night for me. And so we we hung out and got to know each other, and the next thing you know, he was hiring me for his recording sessions.
Yeah. He had the amazing label GRP Records with Bernard Wright, Tom Brown doing Funkin' for Jamaica, Don Blackman, all of my favorites. As a musical associate, do you think he unwittingly or knowingly became the architect of that whole smooth jazz thing?
I think GRP in the Larry Rosen, his partner, was quite a visionary as well, and they were a great combination together. Larry was very visionary on where the music was headed, and so was Dave. Larry took care of the business, Dave took care of the music, and he had partners like me and other folks, and we were kind of following this natural path that was all sort of extensions of various extensions of jazz, but then and like I said, combining rock, combining pop, combining R&B, combining world music. But then as time went on, it got the radio stations and some specific programming, and one of those programmers came up with the word smooth jazz and really watered it down, and a lot of pop musicians got involved and really made it into almost like a pop instrumental, you know. And and then Larry and Dave started to change up and sign more people like Chick Corea and more straight ahead. So they didn't mind reaching the masses with the music in the 70s and 80s, but not for the same commercial reasons that the smooth jazz became.
Yeah, we're going to have any classic Ritenour in the set tonight?
Oh, absolutely. You'll get all those decades: 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. Absolutely.
I just want to finish by asking you about your amazing six-string theory project, bringing together musicians from all over. This is a real passion for you, I know, and I want to know what it makes you feel like when you're confronted with all this new talent, this new hunger for music, and how you learn from it as well.
It's fantastic. This was we just finished up the sixth version of six-string theory. It started in 2010, where I did the six-string theory record with all the legendary guitar players, and we started the contest then to invite a new guitarist to play on the album. It has grown since that time to include 6 genres of guitar and piano, bass, and drums. And this year, 188 countries visited the website. That's almost all of them. And 55 countries joined up, and we had winners from all over the world. And the winners this year get to go to the St. Moritz Jazz Festival in Switzerland. They get to go to Tokyo, play at the Blue Note with me. They'll come to Los Angeles and record with me on a record. The Berklee College of Music is giving 4 scholarships. There's a guitar camp in Montana that one of the winners gets to go to. It's just really wonderful. And the winners were younger than ever this time. And we have our first girl, a classical guitarist, a young monster player, 21 years old, from Czechoslovakia, who lives in France. We have a great jazz guitar player from America, a 20-year-old, a 19-year-old drummer. Just everybody. The oldest guy was the acoustic winner. He was 26. So really some amazing young talent.
Fabulous project and wonderful to spend time with you, Lee Ritenour.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.